So tonight we're here to meet with the Accommodations Tax Committee for the City of Clemson. First off, we wanted to have everyone introduce themselves and tell their background as far as the committee goes. So I'll start right here.
Okay, I'm Ethel Pettigrew. I'm a CPA, so I'm a business person in town. Primarily, I think that's why I'm here, but I've been on the committee 3 years, so second longest.
Okay.
I'm Bobby Congdon, co-owner of Kite Hill Brewing Company over in Patrick Square. That was my first year on the committee. Also teach at Clemson, and just as of 2 weeks ago moved to Clemson from Seneca. So, happy to be here.
Bill Harley, I'm with First Citizens Bank here in Clemson. Been on the committee, I believe, about 6 years. And anyway, that's all you need to know about me.
All right, Denise.
I'm Denise Rogers. I work with Accent Hotel Group. We have 4 hotels here in Clemson. This is my first year on the committee here.
I'm Chris Fuller. We own Evolve Kitchen and Table and Loose Change downtown. I've been in business for 25 years now. This is my first year on the committee as well.
Okay. Thank y'all. So the first order of business is to elect a committee chair, and so someone would need to make a motion and second, and then after that point, that person will take over the meeting.
I move that we elect Bill Harley as our chair.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
As long as you don't.
What's
He
that?
knew
As
it.
long as you don't decline.
No, I didn't
He
decline.
already knew.
He already knew.
He does have the longest history and probably a really good understanding of what this committee's about, and then
All right, you ready for me, Leslie?
yes, so if you want me to, I can go over some of the, really at this point it's more of a work session for you guys so that we can talk about what this committee's about, why it started, and then what our role is for reviewing applications that will come in. They're due the, let's see.
September 6th, isn't it, Leslie?
Let's see, I'm gonna get to the end.
Yep. September 6th.
September 6th.
Yep.
And then we will meet tentatively at the moment, I think it's September 26th, to be able to review the applications and then y'all will make a recommendation to council as far as who we should support with the A-tax money. So the biggest part of this, so first I want to talk about is how we get the money and where it's from, and basically what the law is first. And so state collects 2% of accommodations taxes from the hotels who collect it from the people staying in the hotels. So that money is sent to the state, and then they send it to us, and 30% of the money, let me start back, $25,000, the first $25,000 is given to the city for their general fund. After that, then it's split 65, 30, and 5. 65%, is these grant funds that is the reason you guys are here. Y'all, we collect it, and the 65%, we keep it in an account that we are able to see how much we'll have available. 30% then is given to our the visitor center, which we have a contract with the chamber, so we give the 30% to the chamber. The other 5% is then allowed to go into general fund. So our main goal and objective, or your main goal and objective as the committee, is to review the applications and award the 65%. I will tell you that as of, we finally got the final payment for fiscal year '24, which is the money we use to fund, the grants in 2025. It was $262,000. So, which is about 10,000, well, it really is about 10,000 more than we had last year. So that is, great. We didn't award all of the money last year. So we did have I think we had 10,000 left, but it just rolls over whatever's left every year. Yes, sir.
The 262 is the number of the whole, or is that what, the 65%?
The 65%, that's how much we have to give away.
262?
It's 262. And so in the grant program that was issued, this was kind of the first year we had a little more formal documentation for applicants to see. And so on your first page of the grant program, it tells what we can use the money for. And advertising and promotion of tourism to develop and increase tourist attendance through the generation of publicity. I cannot talk tonight, so sorry. Promotion of arts and cultural events, construction, maintenance, and operations of facilities for civic cultural events, activities including construction and maintenance of access and the nearby roads and utilities for the facilities. Basically, the next one is to provide, I would say, city services, police protection, fire protection, solid waste collection. And some of these applications you'll see will be people wanting and needing to pay for the garbage to be picked up after an event, or police security. So those will be valid costs that can be included in those events. Then public facilities. So if somebody wanted to submit an application for a restroom that's a public restroom, that money can be used for that. So private entities are not the only ones. When I say private, I mean like not-for-profits. They're not the only people who can request the funds. Other government entities can request the funds. So you may, last year, for instance, we got applications from the rec department. So for some capital things that they requested, and that it was approved and recommended and council approved. So it doesn't have to be just a not-for-profit. And as a matter of fact, in their application, you'll see that it says a tax exempt, a church or a religious organization, a government tax exempt unit, or some other type of nonprofit. So those are the types of entities that can request funds. One other main note that I want to make sure we all understand is when it comes to tourism and the promotion of tourism, you have to have things that you're advertising to try to bring in people that live 50 miles away. That is considered a tourist, okay? So those are the biggest things.
Because the assumption is they'll want to stay in a hotel room.
Right, right.
And one of the things we've always looked at in the past too is making sure of who is going to really be generating money in the businesses that generate this money for us.
Right.
So sometimes we will have people that apply and the events they have do not have people come and stay in Denise's hotels and stuff like that. And they stay in other ones. So that will be something.
So making sure they advertise the local hotels, or try to make sure they maybe even do block rooms if possible. Sometimes I know you can't make people stay somewhere, but you can advertise for it, and that's a big deal, is that they advertise for our hotels.
And the other assumption is we don't get the same money, but the city does off of the food vendors. The city gets funds off the food.
Right, and that's part of why the hospitality people are included in this, because it also helps generate hospitality money and sales in hotels and restaurants. So a couple of the other items that I didn't mention that are on the list, the shuttles, like if they wanted to pay for cat bus to run a route, that could be a valid expense that they could request. But that's one of those that definitely has to be a lot of upfront work, because cat bus because it's also grant funded, they have requirements. And so there's a lot of upfront work that would have to be done to get that even in motion. So just know, if somebody questions why does it cat bus just run them here and there, that's the reason, because it receives grant funding that has very strict requirements on what they can and can't do. One that was interesting to me was the control and repair of waterfront erosion, including beach renourishment. I'm sure this is big at the beach. It helps, some of the, because if you don't have a beach, nobody's gonna go stay at the hotels at the beach. I mean, but we do have 12 Mile Park, so I mean, that could be a valid
Used by the
request
city.
of their, yes. So, then the last one is the operating of a visitor's information center. So we already fund that through the 30% money, but if, say a city or even a county who gets accommodations funds, if that's not enough and they want to provide more funding for the visitor center, they can. Or it could be that they have a real visitor center, conference center, and they are funneling the 65% money and offering that as grant in addition to the 30%. Any questions or any thoughts y'all have on anything?
I think it would be good to go over the ineligible things too.
Okay,
Leslie.
absolutely.
It's on the back page. Sometimes we get into stuff in the applications, we'll have things in there that, there'll be a lot of stuff in there that's valid, and then there'll be stuff in there that's not valid, and we say, we're giving you a grant, but you can't spend the money on whatever this, some of the things in there are not eligible, so that'll be something that'll be important for us to be aware of.
So an example would be if you're only advertising it locally, there's no way we can recommend grant money for that, because you're not getting that tourist. They're not going to stay. This whole thing, and you'll hear other people call it heads in beds. You want to have heads in beds, and if you're just advertising it for local people, then you're not going to get hotels
That's sort of like
stays.
Clemson.
Well, it can be, but then we determined last year that Barbara, who is our other member who works at the Abernathy, she said that they actually have bookings from out-of-towners who are coming for events for the Brooks Center, which was surprising. And so one of the things we learned, and I didn't realize this, was that the Abernathy only has king-size beds. So it appeals to an older demographic, maybe with no children or not wanting to bring children because they don't have double beds. And so coming to see a play or a musical or something going on at the Brooks Center, the Abernathy is the perfect hotel for them. So apparently they do. So that's why they got funding last year. Some of the items on here, not only are the targeting local audiences are not allowed, but any fundraising expenses, let's see, if they need to pay off any debt to have the event, then that's not allowed. And I would say probably my idea of what that is if you have a welcome center or a conference center that they have issued debt to build, you can't use grant funding to help pay off their debt. That's where I'm thinking people are not going to just borrow money to have an event. Probably it's going to be on a structure, a building that they've borrowed money to build. That is a conference center and brings people in, but you can't use it to pay that debt. The travel cost to and from the program or event that, you know, for their entity you can't pay for. Then anything for profit. So that has been one that we've gotten a few requests and they were for profit. And so those have been some we've denied in the past. Let's see. And then the last one, it says certain items within programs or events that include but are not limited to food, performance fees, postage, shipping, consultant fees, retainer fees. So things that are not deemed eligible by the South Carolina Tourism Oversight Review Committee. And every year after we give the grants away, we're required to submit documentation to the State Tourism Committee, and they overview it and let me know if there's anything we've not been compliant on. And we can lose, I mean, literally, they have the right to take any state accommodation tax money from us.
So how does that, at that reconciliation, if someone's found to not be able to support the grant money they were given, who goes to get it back?
That's one of the things that I've since I've been here, and I've only been here 3 years, I've had to ask for somebody to give back very little money, but I did have to give it back because they didn't spend every dime that they were given on an eligible expense.
And if that situation occurs,
Then
they understand that they need to return
That's
that.
part of the application that they're told that, yeah.
well, and this year I added there's basically a statement of assurances on the back of the application. And basically they have to say, they understand that these have to be used for the intended expenses, and that they have to keep their records, and if they don't have documentation, that they will have to pay us back. Now, somebody could just say they're not going to pay us back and we don't give it. But they will never get another grant until
Sure.
that money's paid back.
Sure.
And they probably, I'm not sure that, it would probably take some time to even build back that trust. I'm not saying we could deny them forever, but, if they have
I'm a big fan of accountability, so.
Oh, absolutely.
Thankfully, we have a lot of people who apply for these grants who do the right things. And
Yes, that's the hope, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
it will.
And again, the one that had to pay back, literally, we just said, okay, you haven't spent the total amount. And literally, it was like less than $20. And so I said, we said we need that, you've got to write us a check back, and they did.
Sure.
So it goes back into the 65% pot, so that money would be available for another year.
So, in everybody's who's been on this committee, in your experience, this is relatively straightforward with the folks who are.
Seems to be.
Yeah,
they're.
it's very
It's not very.
straightforward. I've been on here a while.
No nefarious actors.
No, it's very straightforward. You'll be
Okay.
familiar with
Good.
some of the events that come up, and probably know some of the people, and it's very straightforward, and people do the right thing.
Okay.
So it's
Yes.
nothing to be alarmed about, and we're providing a good service by giving these events that do something good for our city some money to enable them to conduct their events,
And hopefully,
it's good for all of us.
That's great.
and hopefully generate more money to come back. And that's the whole purpose of the A-Tax, is to be able to bring people into town to spend money by sleeping in hotels and eating at restaurants. So, I don't know, I've always been curious, do y'all ask people when they come in
Oh, yes.
and how you document it? And if do you see, I guess what I'm gonna ask is when these applications come in, if there's a way that you can go back and do some research and say, yes, we had people stay here for these events. Because I will say, if it's a new event, you won't know.
Right.
And they have to estimate some of that. But some of the old things that we've been we've been giving grants to for a while now, they, you know,
The cruise.
yeah, the rowing is a big one, and I'm sure they will apply again. So they bring in the teams from up north to come practice in the winter time when it's pretty slow around here. I think February and March. I will say this last year is maybe an anomaly. I think we had, I don't know about hotels, but and y'all tell me, but I feel like some of the sporting events that were here more in the spring brought more people here than had been in the past.
I would say there's more of a consistency throughout the spring versus this, you know, the peaks and valleys.
I think that some of the sporting events, and not just necessarily the rowing cruise, but one of the things that we have seen is with the success of the baseball team and the softball teams from Clemson, we're seeing more parents and more fans come to those events.
Gymnastics.
Gymnastics has been huge.
And that's the one I was thinking of.
I was
But yeah, but I know, and
pleasantly surprised.
Oh, and the
Who would've
basketball
thought?
team
Basketball.
was
Helped a lot this year.
all that helped keep
There's
things
a lot
more
more
consistent.
events going on in different areas of fandom. So it brings I think it brings a lot of different types of people that are not just football fans, you know.
Right, absolutely.
Kind of nice.
So,
We get more consistency year-round is what you're saying, it's what I hear you saying.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing. I mean, those of us who live in town can see that summertime still dies, but the rest of the year it doesn't seem to drop off as much as,
June,
and
July.
all the kids who come to camp, it seems to me that all their parents come and stay.
They do. A lot of them.
I never did, I dumped my kid and left, but,
It's moving.
but then again, I
It's
left across the
moving
street, but that's a different problem.
It's move-in week and everybody's here. With my parents dropped me off and we had dinner and that was
Yes, they don't
find a
do
way
that.
home for Christmas.
There was one parent in Publix this week, I was going, y'all are gonna kill me, because every conversation was at the top of their voices for whatever reason. I was going, I really don't need to know what they need. But they were just so loud. I was going, and my mother just said, here's money, go get what you need, you know. We don't helicopter.
So when we're reviewing applications, are we, like if we're not awarding the full amount, is that because of these eligible costs typically, or because there's not enough money in them?
but it could be both. So, I know,
Last year, I think we shorted somebody something because of the overall program that they were gonna do.
right,
And we decided that part of it was not eligible, and part of it we decided they just asked for too much out of the funds, and we would rather hold over some for this year, hoping that they might get more money, but it was like a first year or something.
Bobby, we've had occasions where we had more requests than money, and then you
Okay.
have to, sometimes you have to make some hard decisions about how we allocate the money, and sometimes we've had plenty of money to do everything that was there, it was eligible. So we just need to make sure we look at them and do all that.
so one thing to remember is y'all, not me, y'all recommend to the city council. They do not have to abide by it. But my understanding is this council, the council here in the city of Clemson has always taken the recommendation. That may not be true for 30 years ago, but in the recent history, they usually go by what the committee recommends. But they can sway from that if they wanted to.
If they had some pet project that they knew was coming in, they could change our numbers accordingly, but
Or if
generally they haven't.
Well, I was gonna say, I wouldn't say pet project, I would say if they knew something maybe they've heard that people weren't staying in hotels, and maybe they've gotten some other information. Hopefully they would relay that to us prior
Ahead of
to.
time.
Prior.
Yeah.
In the past, as you guys like you said, maybe you have so many applicants that, is it one of those situations where you just try to equitably distribute to everybody who's qualified, or you literally pick and choose? That's
It's been a little of both,
okay.
I think, because at least the 3 years, we've had just enough money one year, and we kind of looked across the board and said, we're going to have to cut this person back in order to give a little bit to this one. But last year, we were able to generally fund most of it, unless it was something we felt like was ineligible.
And it does matter if we ask the hoteliers who've been on the committee, who is staying in your hotel, who's generating the money that we have to give out. That has a big bearing on who gets it. Heads and beds, which is the whole purpose of it.
Yeah.
So if it's down to, okay, we've got this one and this one, and they say, well, they spend a lot of money in our hotels, and this one, maybe a little bit, it's gonna weigh much more heavily on the ones
So
that
we
stay
should
in
be
the local
considering
hotels.
that should be part of the consideration.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
And the other thing is, it can be advertised to tourists as a tourism thing, like a tourist event, but like if they've proven or can prove that they brought, like most of the people they're bringing in, and one of the ones is rowing. I mean, y'all, we see the buses here, so we know those folks are coming from out of town.
Right.
But if somebody, I will say, some events that may happen in town, we may not know, and it's harder to know if they've brought them in. So if you have a short amount of money for all the requests, you know, you kind of feel like, do you need to look at those that we have knowledge that they're bringing in people from out of town versus something that we may have seen that didn't really bring in a lot of people.
Is there somewhere we can find, like, historically, how much money has been received each year and which applications have been approved in the past?
Yes, I can get that to you guys. I will tell you that during COVID, so I started in 2021, in February, and the prior format of how this committee worked was budget was approved in June, July 1, whatever the budget number was, that's the grants they awarded. So if they estimated they were gonna get $150,000 as 65%, these applications were sent out and asked for to be completed, and they were gonna give away up to that 150. Well, we all know what happened during COVID, and so that very first time that they did that, when we got no money that year hardly, we had given away more money than we had collected, so we were in a deficit. So the next year we were unable to give any money, and then the next year we were able to give money, but we had to still fill in a tiny bit of gap. So there was now, instead of budgeting what you think we're gonna get and giving that away, we give away last year's receipts. So, which I found out is how a lot of people do. I mean, it's too hard. And when you had something like COVID, it was really eye-opening to, you know, nobody probably ever thought that anything like that would ever happen. So why change status quo? But then when you go negative, I mean, when I say we were 262 to give away now, we were negative $110,000 that year.
Yep.
So that's why I don't have as much experience with this committee as even Bill has, because my first year we didn't have any committee meetings.
So what other questions do y'all have of this?
As for when the applicants submit by their deadline, do we review them individually, or we convene to review?
In the past, we have convened to review. That's how we'll do it this year.
Okay.
What we're talking about earlier is what I'd like to do is once we get all the applications in on the 6th, and we send those out to everybody.
Okay, so we will
And so,
get them.
yeah, so that everybody has read through these things, so then we come on September the 26th, that's.
The tentative date right now.
It's a tentative date for our meeting we'll have a meeting September 26th, and then we will determine what our awards are that night, and then we'll be done with what we do.
Yeah,
So-
it ought to be easier, because a lot in the past, because what Herb wanted to do and how Herb did it was a little different. A lot of our time was reading those applications just to see if we really thought they met the criteria.
Right.
So we met longer than we will probably have to if we pre-read them, so.
So my ask of you is, each of you is to take these things home, obviously tonight, and read those so that when you get the applications, you're familiar with, okay, this is ineligible, this isn't. So you'll have a good idea of doing that, and obviously read the applications. They're not real arduous to read, and so it's gonna be fine to go through that, read the applications. So when we come in here on the 26th, we'll actually have a pretty good idea of what we want to do, and should be an efficient meeting that night, and we can do that, and that's the long and short of this. It's not rocket science, and so we're doing a good thing for our city, and by awarding these, and invariably there'll be something where there's maybe some heartburn on something that we'll have to maybe make a hard decision or two, but generally they're pretty straightforward. Anything else, Leslie, we need to go over tonight, you think?
Not that I'm aware of, unless.
I don't want to keep us.
No, we're fine, that's why we're here.
Funding be requested on a continual basis. It's on page 4. So would that be, hey, we're gonna ask for $20,000 this year, $20,000 next year, so on and so forth, or are they asking for a sum from this year's pot? So to
We're not
speak?
gonna be approving anything beyond this one year, so.
That's what I'm.
I think that really is more towards, have you asked for it in the past? Do you plan on asking in the future? So it's like the cruise group. They have been asking for quite a while, so they would say, yes, we plan on continuing this.
Okay.
But there's no guarantee, that, okay, if we do this, we're gonna continue to do this for you. It's
For
just-
sure, okay.
Everything's gotta stand on its own 2 feet.
They have to use the funds that they're allocated
Yeah.
in this, whatever the calendar year is for that, or
Yeah.
fiscal years for that, okay.
So I think part of the reason so I did a lot of research of other applications from other cities to try to make ours better, because ours needed some work. It hadn't been touched and looked at in probably 20 years. I don't know, but it was.
It was a little too simplified.
Well, it was anyway. So we wanted to review some others, and I did a lot of digging. And so this was one question, and I think the reason this is an important question is the longer you have an event, for me, it brings more, it establishes something, people know what they're doing, they want to come, they don't want to miss it.
Typically make it better every year.
Right, and so if you're having a one-time event, it's sort of like this year when the city and the university did the Music Fest. It was, your first year is a trial run. Is it, I think, how did it go? Let's make it better next year. And and I'm not saying they're going to keep doing it, or if they're not, I don't know about it. But I'm saying, but if they thought that it was going to be a one and done, then, we may not have given it or y'all might not have looked at it the same as somebody who, if they're gonna do it every year and it's gonna be on somebody's calendar every year and it's gonna
Like the Blues Festival used to be.
Right, things that just, even the Clemson Fest, even though it was, I know a lot of local people came to that, but I didn't live here, I came to Clemson Fest. So, and I came every year for a long time.
Did you stay in a hotel when you came?
No, because my parents owned a house here, but they did, but I will say that.
That was a loaded question.
Yeah, but I will say though that, I mean, there are people who look forward to those kind of events and go to those. I know people who go to festivals and other places that are not music festival. I mean, they do that, but they have their annual thing. They go to this festival in this city. You know, Beaufort has a lot, like a lot of towns that are known for their festival, they go. So I think that was the whole
Right,
purpose.
those other ones, yeah.
That's the
But-
purpose of asking that.
I have a friend who goes to Ohio every year just to look at pottery. I'm going, really? It's a big pottery festival somewhere in Ohio, and she goes every year. Okay.
Do you have any, Denise, I feel like I keep looking at you because you're the only.
I know, you've got all the goods.
Yeah, you have a lot of knowledge, so.
And a lot of this is when I see the name of the festival, I can tell you, yeah, we've gotten rooms, and no, we haven't gotten rooms.
Right.
And also like the Clemson Music Fest. I got production crews.
I was gonna say, probably.
Oh, that's okay too.
That's all I got was staff.
But hopefully, if they do have it again, it gets to be a bigger thing.
And that's
hopefully.
true. But one of the things that I also had a lot of feedback on that one, the weekend that it was planned, there was also a huge concert in Simpsonville at the amphitheater there.
Yeah.
So that affected the attendance here. Some of the students that work in our hotels were like, I don't want to go see those people. I don't want to go see those people.
Well, the acts definitely have,
Yeah, and that
will
was, the
determine
acts
for
were not
sure. Yeah.
as attractive as, you know.
But I know like the Anderson Music Fest they just had,
That was huge.
it was gigantic. It was their first time. I can't believe that
They said 15,000 is what they were shooting for, and I think it turned out.
But can you imagine a first-year
I think it was
concert
25.
being that group? I mean, of entertainers. I mean, they were huge. So you know, that's a huge. You know.
Oh.
Well, I'm saying, can you imagine what it took to put it on and it had to be a lot of work for a
We got
lot of people.
crews for that too.
Good.
Yeah, there was a lot of people up here.
Yes, because they were here for the crews were here, came in around 10 days earlier, and the organizers from it actually said they usually go about 30 minutes out from the location so that the fans can stay closer to the location and the crews stay further out.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
So that was what happened with that event. So they brought us quite a bit of money.
Great.
For comparison, how big was Clemson Music Fest? I stayed away from that.
Well,
Chris would know because he was.
we were a vendor, and I won't go into the particulars of how the Music Fest was originally envisioned and what ended up happening. But we were told a number that they were expecting or wanted to achieve for attendance. And they ended up actually making the event space smaller by more than half.
Oh, wow.
To, in my opinion, achieve a better look
Yeah.
of a crowd.
I didn't have that many people wandering the streets, and I live downtown, so.
We're right there.
Yeah, I
So
know.
less successful than
Right.
the Anderson.
It was, yes, less than, it has potential, but the acts will dictate attendance.
Right. I mean, I was there on Friday night, but I didn't go Saturday.
Right.
I didn't care about who was there Saturday,
There were
but
more people
I
on
enjoyed Friday.
Saturday evening
Yeah.
than Friday. It was somewhat shocking how few, but I mean, even the student body. So, but there was there were families there. It was not as family oriented as I thought maybe it was intended to be originally. So, I'm still waiting for an after action meeting with those guys.
But again, I guess that's my whole point of using that as an example of, is this a first, you know, if somebody were to come in and say they were gonna do an event and it's their first year, but they're thinking they're gonna do it again, you know, you may give them some this year, but as you see that they're quantifying the beds and heads and beds, then you may say, okay, well, next year, then, you know,
I think they'll have, if they, I think they want to do it again. You know, originally it was gonna be a city-only event, and then it changed to the collaboration, use that loosely. I think there's potential for it to grow into something neat. If they choose the acts appropriately, and they can choose them to cover everybody, but I think they could, and if those guys, that ones who came in to organize or finish organizing, they have a far reach, and I think they have a good handle on what they would like to see differently. But that was
Yeah, and
there was
I'm
there was
sorry,
a lot
I
of
didn't really
there was
mean
a
to
lot
get
of-
us on a
Yeah.
tangent, but I was trying to use that as a good example of somebody
I,
with an intention of wanting it to be more. Sort of like the first year they did the rowing.
right.
We didn't know how many people were gonna end up coming on that.
And that's the thing. I mean, I think it will get more traction if it's a sustained event.
Right, absolutely. And I know the aquatic team usually requests
They do.
grant funding, and they have like 2 or 3 open water meets every year. And so that's,
It's another one we asked from them. We usually do give them something.
What's the rough proportion been of like specific events versus, you know, longer term things like public restrooms or something of that sort?
all right. So last year was our first year of anybody asking for capital money. And that, of course, it was the city.
It was mostly events then.
It's
It's
mostly
mostly events. I will say though, last year, so prior to FY 2024, I think, no, it was in FY 2023. So our fiscal year is July to June. So the city brought in tourism into the city as a function of the city. It used to be ran by the chamber. And so whatever grant funding was requested for running that part was they would get the 30% money for the visitor center, and then we would, as the committee would approve an amount that was requested or whatever. I don't know exactly how, I wasn't here then. So it was given to the chamber instead. And so now that that's a department and a function of the city, you will see a grant application from the city for tourism. So just know that that's one. So that has been a change in the last 3 or 4 years.
That's the last 2.
Yeah, 2.
Yeah.
Well, before we didn't have any money.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have a permanent, they finally hired a full-time
A
person.
full-time person.
Just to
right,
do tourism
just
in
to
the
do
city.
tourism in the city. So,
So the event-based stuff, you probably see a measurable impact on those. Like, we got 20% more beds full.
It depends on the event.
Yeah.
And Yule, as Leslie noted, Denise is going to be the main resource
And
for us on
Barbara.
this.
And Barbara.
Yeah.
Barbara too. Barbara's not here tonight, but yeah, the 2 people that run hotels. So we will, because a lot of times it's going to get down to, okay, are they staying in your hotel? It's going to be the decision
Yes.
maker as far as whether we give them
Yeah.
funding or not. Because we've had stuff in the past where we had people apply for grants, and all the people were staying in hotels that were in Anderson County.
Or over across the river.
And
And then that's not we're not getting the money to give away if they're staying over there. So
you can't make them stay there, here, but you can't, the big thing is, are you advertising to stay here?
yeah.
That's the key to this.
And we like to see that they actually are staying here, if possible, and that's where Denise and Barbara can tell us if that's really what's happening.
One of the things that I have noticed that we run into, and there's a couple of events that are going on this fall, that people have reached out to me about staying, and the events are held at Garrison, which I know that's in Anderson County, but we do give people stay here even though the event is held there. But the thing is, Garrison isn't telling them that it's a football weekend, or it's the potential of hosting the playoff football game.
Oh,
Playoffs. So
that's right.
they're planning their events, and then they're calling me, and I'm telling them, love to have you, but guess what? It's a football weekend. Or love to have you, but guess what? There's the potential at this. And
How do you all, with that, do you just block them off for the moment?
for like the potential playoffs, yeah. We raise our rates and we block it off.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it's a conundrum.
So, yeah, so we run into things like that. So, you know, I don't know if they're not telling them the potential, like if they're planning it a year out or whatever before the schedule's set.
I will say this, and this is something I've been told and I have to keep being reminded of. I get that there are only so many hotel rooms, but, you know, in my mind, I always go, why would somebody, you know, I'm a sports crazy person, so why would somebody even host something on a football weekend? And then somebody will look at me and go, because everyone doesn't like football, you know, so, but there are only so many hotel rooms, so.
Like, I know that there's one rodeo that's held at Garrison, and it's usually the first or second weekend in November, and I know the last 2 or 3 years, it has fallen on a football weekend. I could care less about football, but my daughter's a rodeo fan, so we go to the rodeo, and Garrison is packed.
And again, there's the whole thing of everybody's not into the same things. So that's why, and I think their event is a scheduled event every year, so they,
That one is.
whether, it doesn't matter about football for them, it is what it is, so.
If there's, did anybody have any other questions about anything? So,
I just had one minor one, sorry. I guess it does say, you keep talking about hotels, but I guess that this also includes Airbnbs and whatnot too, that are collecting the 2% tax.
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah, they have to too,
yeah.
yes.
I figured that was the case.
But it's easier to get to the hotel folks than it is to the Airbnb people
Yes.
or the VRBO people either.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
so the process from here, just like we talked about a little bit ago, take this home, reread it so you can get really familiar with it. Then when we get all the applications in on the 6th, we'll send those out to everybody. And we'll probably send, if y'all have some questions prior to us having the meeting on the 26th, we can try and address those. We'll just send out an email and just say if there's any questions anybody has. I think that would be, maybe we send something about a week before to make sure there's no burning questions anybody has. And then we'll come in ready to make our final decisions on the 26th. It should not be if we have the same number of applications we've had in the past, you don't need to worry. It's not going to be a 4-hour meeting. I would think we could probably get it done in an hour, hour and a half, something like that, without a lot of heartburn. But anybody, unless anybody has anything else, Leslie, you have anything else? Can I get a motion that we adjourn?
Second the motion.
Okay.
so moved. We'll do it.
Okay. All right. We stand adjourned.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.